turn your camera on. So thank you for joining G.R.I.T Community today. I'm very excited to have this panel of extremely talented expert attorneys with us. They're all local to St. Louis as well. So if you haven't connected with them, make sure you do so after this call on LinkedIn, which I'll put all their contact
You
information.
just needed to stay in there for another couple minutes.
Oh, Lauren, can we have you mute? I'll do that now. So if you could stay muted during the presentation, that makes everything kind of more streamlined. But anyway, I'm going to kick it to the Danna McKitrick attorney team, who's going to have a panel of experts providing you with the 5 things that you should know to help keep your LLC legally compliant with the state of Missouri. So I'll go ahead and kick it to you.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm just going to go to the next slide here. Just for anyone who doesn't already know us, we have a couple of slides with introductions. My name is Katherine Flett. I am an attorney at Danna McKitrick. We pride ourselves on being a one-stop shop for businesses. We have attorneys who handle employment law, real estate, banking, litigation, tax matters, the whole gambit. We also have an amazing estate planning and probate team. I primarily focus my practice on employment law, both on the litigation side and advisory side, as well as contract review, general business advice, business litigation. I like to keep my clients out of litigation. If they take my advice, they usually do. And then really, we represent everyone from closely held family businesses, the solopreneur type of company to very large corporations. I'll leave the rest of that for you all to read. I don't need to talk that much about myself, but I'm going to pass it over to Courtney now.
Hey guys, I'm Courtney English, if we've never met. So I'm also, of course, an attorney at Danna McKitrick. So my focus is intellectual property and business. So I do like the branding side of things, trademarks, your IP, create for your courses, all that fun stuff. So I protect that. So again, like kind of reiterate what Kate said, we're really a full service firm. So we cover the transaction side and litigation. So we try to advise you, keep you out of trouble, but if you get into trouble, we can handle that too. So that's kind of the short and sweet of it. So I also local, I moved here in 2019, but I'm originally from Illinois. So I have assimilated to St. Louis now. So Jen can probably speak to that. She helped.
And yeah, she who helped me with all the trademarking for G.R.I.T Community and pretty much the whole foundation of how I've created this community. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm grateful to have met you. So,
all right, Jaime.
I'm Jaime Curry. I'm also an attorney here at Danna McKitrick. I concentrate my practice in both corporate law, so formations of businesses as well as buying and selling. And then I also have a background in estate planning and tax planning. I'm originally from Indiana, but I've been here in St. Louis since 2012, except I spent a year out in Beverly Hills, so I'm also licensed in California. But I'm happy to be here today, and hopefully we can provide you with some information for your own businesses.
All right, so this is just kind of an outline of our presentation today of the 5 things that we believe you should know to keep your LLC legally compliant in Missouri. We're going to kick things off with Courtney, who's going to talk about why you need an operating agreement.
Okay, so we're talking about operating agreements. So what is an operating agreement? An operating agreement, it's really put simply, it's the contract between you and your business. It's where we put the rules of how you operate as the business owner, what is expected in your business, and how you're going to treat your business. So it is not filed with the Secretary of State, but it is required by law. So it's something that once you have it, you should be saving it in your own files. And also, without it, you run the risk of losing your protection of being an LLC. So I often get asked people to file their LLC online because it's very simple to do in Missouri, the actual filing portion. But what you don't realize is this has to happen at the same time. And this is something that is drafted outside of that filing. So that's really where this comes into play in the beginning stage of when you start your business, but also you should be reviewing it and updating it. Next slide. So it's crucial because it does establish that ownership, how you conduct your business, as well as how it's taxed. And I know I get a lot of questions when people start LLCs are like, well, can I be an S Corp? Well, what if I start as a sole prop for taxation purposes? Like, how do I make those changes? And all these questions as business owners, when you're trying to figure those things out, the operating agreement is the place where you lay that out. So it's how are we going to treat this? Are we going to be taxed that way? So that's really the document that's going to govern that relationship. So again, it's something you actually have to have, and you should not pull it off Rocket Lawyer, because it's supposed to be specific to be you in your business. And every business should be run unique to your goals. This should reflect that. So it's an important to review to make sure it's still up to date with your goals of your business, how you want to be taxed, who you want to hire, all of those types of provisions that govern the day-to-day, as well as the big picture goals.
All right, next I'm going to talk about making sure you have the appropriate person serve as your registered agent. So just like an operating agreement, designating a registered agent is something that's done right at the forefront of when you form your company. What is a registered agent? Registered agent is the person who serves as that official point of contact for the state, and that person is responsible for receiving service of process, which is another way of saying lawsuits, and other legal documentation. Many LLC owners who serve as their own registered agent, that's one of the things we see most commonly, because when you do set up your LLC with the Secretary of State, a lot of people have not already spoken with a business attorney or an accountant or anyone else to help them set that up. So they just write themselves in as a registered agent. And they often use their business address or their home address as the place for service. And that can be problematic for a multitude of reasons, but the most common ones I see pop up is if the business address is listed as the registered agent address, any kind of lawsuits that are filed, service for those lawsuits will come to your business. So as a business owner, the last thing you want is a sheriff coming up to your front door, and while there's customers and employees inside of your business, serving you with a lawsuit. It's not a good look. If the owner's home is listed as a registered agent, likewise, you're going to have a sheriff show up to your door. Not pleasant. And it's also important to know that the registered agent address is public on the Secretary of State's website. So if you have a problem with your address being public, that's another thing to consider, because that will your home address would be listed on the Secretary of State's website for all to see. So really the best practice is to have your business attorney serve as the LLC's registered agent. And I know that's self-serving because we're business attorneys, but honestly, it is the best practice, because God forbid if a lawsuit is filed, it is then in your business attorney's hands, because there are very tight deadlines for filing responses to these lawsuits, or even if it's another government document. I mean, typically they have a pretty tight turnaround time. So it's really important to make sure that it's in the right hands and gets there timely, because if you all are like me and don't check your home mail very often, that can get you in trouble. And in addition to being served by a sheriff, there are certain causes of action that can be served by mail. So it's really important to avoid defaults or anything like that, to make sure that you have that appropriate person serve as your registered agent, and make sure that that address is updated. If you move companies or move addresses, that's a really important thing to keep updated. It's like your operating agreement. Next, register all fictitious names properly. So a fictitious name, that's a DBA. Most of us call doing business as. It's really just any name that's other than the official name that you have registered with the state. And Missouri law does require anyone doing business under a name other than the legal name to file a fictitious name registration with the Secretary of State's office. So those of you who know me, my husband, his name is Andy, and he's in the barbecue scene. So this example will make sense. If the legal name of an LLC is Flett Enterprises LLC, and Flett Enterprises LLC owns a barbecue restaurant, and it's called Andy's Barbecue, the owner should then register Andy's Barbecue as a fictitious name. Now, failure to register that fictitious name is actually a misdemeanor under the law, which is kind of interesting. I don't see many prosecuting attorneys going after these types of things, but under the law, it is technically a misdemeanor, so that's important to know. And if a company does operate under a name that's not properly registered, the owners risk individual liability. So that's really the most common issue I see come up And I'm just going to use my prior example. So if Flett Enterprises does not properly register Andy's Barbecue as a fictitious name, and it could be argued that Andy's Barbecue is being operated under Andy's individual capacity. The purpose we form these LLCs, I mean, it's to make sure that we have that limited liability. So it's just really important that we go through the proper hoops to make sure that we maintain that limited liability. So the application to register a fictitious name, it does require a list of owners of the fictitious name. So it's really important. Here's the properly part about registering the fictitious name. I see this again and again where businesses will put themselves as the owner of the fictitious name instead of the LLC's name. So again, I'm going to stick with the same example. If Andy registers as the owner of the fictitious name, Andy's Barbecue, so if he has Andy Flett as the owner of that, he can be held personally liable for all business conducted under Andy's Barbecue. And instead of doing it that way, the proper way would be to register Flett Enterprises LLC as the owner of the fictitious name. That way, you know, if someone chokes on a chicken bone at Andy's Barbecue, God forbid, and a lawsuit is filed, that lawsuit would be against Flett Enterprises LLC rather than Andy Flett individually. So again, just really critical to prevent those things from happening, because if you think about it, if someone gets hurt and they don't know who to sue, they're going to sue the name that they know. And as lawyers, the first thing you do is you look on the Secretary of State's website to see what the proper name is. So having those ducks in a row is just really critically important. So how to do this? Really easy. You don't need an attorney to do it. Online registration through the Office of Secretary of State of Missouri. Here's the website. It provided it for you. You can also do mail-in registration if you're old school. Current filing fee is $7, and I've included a copy of what the form looks like. Really simple. Like I said, just make sure that you do include the correct owner where it says name of owners, individual or business entity. Don't put your individual name there. If you have an LLC, put the name of the LLC. And all fictitious names are good for 5 years after they're registered, and they can be renewed in the 6-month period prior to the expiration of that. So that's another thing to stay on top of. They do expire at 5 years, so make sure that you keep that date and deadline in your calendar if you don't have an attorney handling it for you. All right, next, I'm going to toss it back over to Courtney. She's going to talk about registering trademarks.
Okay, so tip number 4, register your trademarks. Trademarks are what I like to say the sexier side of what I do, because it's branding, right? So it's like the thing you put your heart and soul into, the colors, the look, like it's what the world sees when they transact with you. So it's a sound, a word, a phrase, or a symbol or design, or any combination of those things that identifies your goods or services. So again, it's what a consumer sees. If somebody wants to purchase, give you money, this is what they're saying. So a few examples. Marilyn Manson trademarked his name, so you can do that. There's a few rules to that, but that is a possibility. The Nike swoosh, that would be an example of a symbol, a design. The Tesla, we have a combination of word and design. And then I put the Tiffany blue box because that color is actually trademarked. So that's something pretty interesting people don't realize, is that you can't replicate Tiffany blue. So you have Robin's blue, Robin's egg blue, and different names of it, but you can't exactly replicate that because it's protected. Yeah, see, so, and then Mizzou. So you can trademark sports names, sports teams, colleges. It has to be like their short name, but Mizzou is trademarked. And then the Darth Vader sound is also trademarked, which people always find interesting because that is a source identifier. So if you hear it, you associate it with purchasing or Star Wars, like there is an association. So that's where trademarks come into play. So what's not a trademark? So it can't be an idea, a catchy phrase, or a slogan that's not used in commerce. It is required that we show that this mark is being used with purchasing something, an event, an educational series. It can't just be an idea you had and you put it all over social media. We have to link it back to a business. And that's really important. I've actually done quite a few hashtag trademarks, which you can do, but they have to be linked back to a service. So people come with these clever hashtags, and you have to make sure you're connecting that before you can file for protection. And then, oh yeah, it will not, yeah, it'll be denied registration. Like I said, you cannot get registration if you apply without that connection. So why are trademarks important? Well, they actually play both offense and defense. So it ensures your mark is not infringing on anyone else and that no one can infringe on you. So you're playing both sides and it can add value to your business. I also want to make the point here that trademarks are accessible to all business owners. So that's a question I usually get in this type of group. It's like, well, when does that make sense? Can I do that? Or don't I have to be bigger? You do not. You can do that from when you first start your business. So they are accessible, and the rules to get a trademark that I'm giving you are the same for everybody. So there's no like favoritism towards a bigger brand or anything like that. Even Obama has had trademarks denied. So like anyone can get a trademark denied. Kim K, all of them. Taylor Swift's dealing with one right now. So the rules apply to everybody. So go to the next one. So how do they add value? They actually help to promote brand awareness. They take down copycat social media sites. That's one of my favorite things to do. If someone copies your Instagram, and if you have a registered trademark, we can take that down. We can also block infringing goods at customs. This is huge right now because like Temu, Shein, like the bigger importers of cheap, fast fashion really, or goods, they're ripping off a lot of brands. So if we have a registered trademark, we can stop at customs from that counterfeits that even come into the country. So that's been a big one. You can also raise your ranks on like Amazon and Etsy. Like Amazon, I get emails all the time from Amazon. It's like, can you verify this trademark was registered for a client? So we have to go back in, verify registration, shoot it back to Amazon, and they bump up our clients on that selling registry because they have that. So it also allows for licensing deals. People don't realize that like the Trump hotels are not all owned by Trump. They're actually licensed trademarks. So a lot of them, people are licensing that name and putting it on their buildings. So that's a cool thing you can do with the trademark for value. And you can stop fake international imitators and copycat domains. So if someone copies your website, I've used this quite a few times, we can take down that website just because the domain is similar to your trademark name. So again, the value is really vast and it allows you to play a lot of different strategies to protect your brand. So what about your brand? So if you have not registered your brand as a federal trademark, you're running the risk of losing that brand. There are certain statutes that will push for the first person to file gets priority. And these laws can get nuanced very quickly. But what you need to know is if you're not protecting it or at least pursuing that process, you're running the risk of losing that mark. And there's 2 steps to doing this. And I like to be very upfront about what this process looks like, because you can't just go file and hope it all works out. Like there are steps that have to happen. So the two key things before you even start the process is eligibility and availability. So eligibility, we have to look at your mark. So whatever your brand name is, we have to determine that it's not generic. It can't be something like, cereal, lawn care, coach. These are some examples I have here. The coaching space, as we know, is pretty hot right now. You can't just put a descriptive term in that, like business coach. Like that's not going to get trademarked. That's too generic and that will just get kicked out. But marks may be able to be somewhat descriptive. So an examples I gave here is like creamy for yogurt or apple pie for potpourri. Descriptiveness we can push through, but genericness we cannot. So you have to be very creative in how you use your names. The more unique, the better. So availability is our next step. Once I look at a mark and we talk about, okay, yeah, this is pretty unique. We think this qualifies. Then we have to see, does it have a chance? Does someone else have that name, a similar name? How are they using it? Because marks that have the same or similar goods and services cannot coexist. So I always give the example of Dove chocolate and Dove body wash because they both coexist, but you're not going to be confused. If you go to buy chocolate, you're not going to be confused that Dove body wash is the same thing. You're going to know these are 2 different types of items, 2 different channels of commerce. So this is how we would analyze that. So that's why they can coexist together. The analysis is unique to each situation. So we'd have to look at your mark specifically to determine what's out there and if there would be a problem. So then what's next? So once we look through that, we analyze it, that's when we apply for protection with the USPTO. At that point, the application is it's nuanced. Everything about this law is nuanced. So we have to make sure that it's applied very specific to your services and how we conducted our analysis. A mistake there can block registration. So that's a very tricky process as well. And how you handle each step has an impact on the protection down the road. So even if you apply and you made a mistake, you could still be opening up yourself to some issues. So if it's not just with the USPTO, those issues can come from other brand owners who are concerned about your registration as well. So the key takeaways on this, they're powerful brand enforcers and protectors, and they're accessible to even the smallest of businesses. Plus, it's much easier to seek protection on the front and then to deal with a very costly trademark issue later. And I always say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think our whole presentation really speaks to that for my business owners here that understand that doing this stuff right on the front end will save you tremendously in the long run.
Yeah, I think Courtney brings up an interesting point. Just going back to the fictitious name registration, I have had people come to me and say, well, isn't my name protected then if I register a fictitious name with the Secretary of State? Absolutely not. There's no guarantee if you register a fictitious name, someone else can do the same name, and it provides no protections. Intellectual property wise, it helps with the liability reasons that I've discussed, but it does not provide any intellectual property rights. So that's why it's really critical to talk to a lawyer about those things.
Yeah, and to Kate's point, we've had situations where people have registered fictitious names, and then someone's pursued the trademark in it who's been in a totally different state, but because they had federal registration of that trademark, that kicked out that fictitious name, and that person had to rebrand. So there is, to her point, like that is not enough. And sometimes that just tells people that you're pursuing the name. So now you put yourself out there that you're going to do this. So it's better to talk to a lawyer on the front end.
So our fifth topic today, and this is something many of you may have heard, and if you haven't, you should be aware of it if you're a business owner, is file your beneficial ownership information report in compliance with the new Corporate Transparency Act. So this is a new law that all business owners, big or small, should know about. And I'm going to toss it over to Jaime Curry now.
Hi, everybody. Like Kate said, this is a brand new law. It's called the Corporate Transparency Act. What it is, it's a component of the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020. And its purpose is for the federal government to be able to obtain ownership information on, in this case, smaller entities. Because a lot of times, especially like in Missouri, for example, when you file an LLC with the Secretary of State, you're actually not telling the Secretary of State who the owner is. You're just creating it. And then there's no check-in in the future as to like whenever you add a new member or take away a member. So the government wants to find a way to track that, so they know who own these corporate entities. And the reason behind it is they want to prevent like money laundering, sex trafficking, terrorist financing, and other illicit activities. So this is the way they're going about it. So what does it mean for you? It means you have to file another document. This document is called a Beneficial Ownership Interest Report, and it gets filed with the Federal Crimes Enforcement Network, which is called FinCEN, which reports to the U.S. Treasury. So who has to report? A reporting company, unless they meet one of 23 exemptions. And again, like we said before, this is primarily geared towards smaller entities. So a lot of those exemptions that exist are going to be for larger corporations, for publicly traded companies, just larger entities in general. So what is a reporting company? A reporting company is any entity that was created by filing a document with the Secretary of State or a similar office under the law of a state. Or it could also be a company that was created in a completely different country, but has since registered to do business in the United States and has filed another document with the Secretary of State saying that they're operating here. So I'm going to quickly go over two of what we think are the most common exemptions out of the 23. The first one is a large operating company exemption. And in order to qualify for this exemption, you have to meet all three of these prongs. So the first thing, your entity would have to employ more than 20 full-time employees in the United States. You would have to have a physical operating office in the United States. And then on your prior year's tax return, you would have had to have reported $5 million or more in gross receipts or sales. So that's a large operating company exemption. The next most common exemption we think is going to be the inactive entity exemption. And in order to qualify for this, you have to meet all 6 of these prongs. So you have to have created the entity prior to January 1, 2020. You have to not be actively operating the business currently. None of the members of the LLC or none of the shareholders have to or can be owned by a foreign person or other entity. You cannot have any kind of a change of ownership in the preceding 12-month period. So you couldn't have brought in a new partner or taken away a partner. You could not have sent or received any funds in an amount greater than $1,000 in the preceding 12-month period. And then you can't hold any other type of asset, whether you're in the United States or you're abroad, and qualify for this exemption. So now you know that you probably have to report under this act. But what happens if you don't do it? Well, something really bad. You can face civil and criminal penalties. So civil penalties are going to be $500 a day for each day that you fail to comply with the act. And then criminal penalties can include imprisonment for up to 2 years and or a fine of up to $10,000. So basically, once you know that you have to report, you should report. So when does that start for you? You can't report today, but you can start reporting January 1st, 2024. If you currently have an LLC or another type of reporting entity that you have in existence today or that you're going to form before December 31 of this year, then you have all the way to the end of next year to file your BOI report with FinCEN. If you're creating a new company and you're not going to create that company until January 1 of next year, you'll have a 30-day time period to make sure that that report gets filed. So 1 year for people who already have these entities in existence, 30 days if you create it at any time next year and then going forward. This isn't a report that you're going to have to file every year, so that's a good thing. But it is a report that you're also going to have to file whenever a change is made to your entity. So what are some examples of that? You changed the name of the entity. You decided to do a DBA. You add a member, you take away a member, or somebody who has been a member who's already been reported on the actual BOI moves and changes their address, or they get married and they change their name. Anytime something like that occurs, you have to file another report. And whenever that happens, again, you'll have 30 days to notify FinCEN of that change. If you discover at some point down the road there's an error in one of the reports that you filed, you have 30 days from whenever you notice that error to update that with FinCEN. So what gets reported? Information. You can go to the next one, Kate.
Oh, I'm trying. There it
There you
goes.
So who's information? Beneficial owners. Well, what does that mean? A beneficial owner is going to be anyone who owns or controls 25 or who owns at least 25% of the ownership interest in the entity. So if you are an owner of an LLC and you own all of it, that's you. If you have interest in some sort of an entity, but you only own 10%, that's not you. The other type of person who will have to provide information would also be an individual who exercises substantial control over a company. So that would mean you're a manager of an LLC, you're a member of the board of directors, you're the senior officer at a company. Those 2 types of individuals will have their information reported. And then if you are creating an entity January 1 of next year on, a company applicant also has to report. Well, what does that mean? That's the person who goes on to the Secretary of State's website and actually files the articles of organization for your company. There could also be a second individual involved. If I were to direct my paralegal to go form that, then both of our information would be reported. So what kind of information are we looking for? What are we trying to gather? So for a reporting company, what gets reported to FinCEN is the full legal name of the company, any trade names or DBAs that you operate under, the complete current address of your physical place of business in the United States. And it does have to be a physical address. You can't provide a PO box or a virtual address. It has to be physical. You're going to report whatever state you were originally formed in and any IRS 10 number EIN numbers that you've been issued. for the entity. When it comes to beneficial owners and company applicants, it's going to be your full legal name, date of birth, complete current address, and this is a home address. You can't use the business address in this instance. And then a unique identifying number for you. So most commonly, that's going to be a U.S. passport or your state driver's license, but it can be any governmental ID that's issued. And when we do file these beneficial ownership information reports, we have to upload a copy front and back of whatever document it is, whatever ID it is that you provide. So that'd be the front and back of like a driver's license. So it's a lot of work up front, but then once it's in place, there's not a whole lot that you have to keep following through unless you have some sort of a change. So again, it's new. It starts next year, and I'm sure as it gets put in place, there might be changes that come along with it, but it's definitely something that's going to affect a lot of small business owners.
All right, that's all we have for today. Are there any questions? We'd love to open it up.
Yeah, feel free just to unmute and go ahead and ask your questions.
I have a question. That last act you were speaking about, is that federal, like across all the United States?
Yes, it's the entire United States. So it's any entity that's formed in any state in the US has to report unless you need an exemption.
Okay.
Do we know yet the specifics of just how we'll report that? Is there an online portal? Is it?
Yes. So FinCEN's creating an online portal where you'll upload that information. It's not live yet. Like we can't go in and enter anything until January 1. It's the information that I previously talked about as far as what gets included for the company name and then for the beneficial owners and anyone who exercises substantial control. That's also something that we're offering to our clients that we can provide on their behalf, just because we know we're going to do a lot of these and we'll be very familiar, but it will be an online process.
I know, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I know that you guys talked about most of everything happening in Missouri. Do similar laws apply in the state of Illinois?
Yes,
Yep.
Illinois is actually more restrictive. Typically, they have a very similar process for registering a DBA, and they do require registered agents. Again, the CTA also applies across the board to any state. Courtney, I'll let you speak to the trademark law. It's mostly federal, correct?
Yeah, trademarks are all federal. So it
Yeah.
is registered with the federal government. So yeah, that would apply to any entity across the country, as well as we do international entities as well. So anyone who's doing a brand in the US.
Hi, I'm Lenore. Thank you, Jennifer, for putting all of this together. And thank you so much to all the panel members for your insight. Very valuable information. My question is, as someone who's looking at starting or getting an LLC or nonprofit, what would you recommend as the very first step in getting that information and making the best decision possible?
Yeah, make sure you have a good team. So again, it's self-serving advice, but you need an attorney. Get a business attorney, get a business accountant, get a good team of people who can help you with that. So I would love to say that I get all of my clients because they have a really good idea to start a company and they walk in my door and say, help me from first base. That's not usually how it happens. Usually something's on fire and they come to us because they need help fixing something, and then we kind of help them make sure that everything is done in compliance from that point on. But the best thing you can do as a business owner is right from the get-go. Get that good team together, get a good business attorney, get a good business CPA, make sure everything is in line to help you start that company, and do the little things that you might not know you don't know, like have an operating agreement and register your DBAs and register your trademarks.
And to Kate's point on that, when you're first starting, there's a lot of things you just don't know what you don't know. You're like, oh, I had no idea that was even an issue, right? So when you're looking for people to be on your team, make sure they're educating you about what's happening and what you need to know. So just blindly taking information and plugging it in. So I think that's an important component to like trying to select people that can best support you and protect you.
And I'll just speak from my experience. It'll save you money too if you do it right from the get-go rather than trying to repair what you've already done by yourself. So if you need suggestions, I'm happy to make intros. These are my team. So
I will definitely be sending you a message privately. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So then, since this is your team, Jennifer, is this a one-stop shop? Like, can you guys help with all of this? You
they
have a
can
huge
help with
to-do
all of
list?
this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Great question.
And do you guys also operate here in Illinois?
Yes, we do. And speaking from the litigator in the room, I'm also licensed to practice in Illinois, any Illinois courts as
Yeah.
well.
And I'm licensed in Illinois. We got quite a few people who are licensed in both now. So
Yeah.
That's fair. I think Southern Illinois is trying to merge into Missouri, right? So
They
maybe that
should.
works out for you.
I would
Yeah.
say a lot of this, we really take a holistic approach as a firm. So if any point you guys are just like, I think I might need you, I don't know if I have a problem, like we're really the place to just have a call and figure it out, because we do it all. And we have so many great people on our team that can go deeper into specific issues. So and
I
we
should
got
have
a lot of
asked,
women.
we have a team, I believe 19 attorneys now. We have 19 attorneys. And like I said, it's the whole gambit of what a business could need. And we're not just the one person shop that claims to be good at everything. I think we all know what we know and what we don't know, and we rely on each other heavily and work really collaboratively to make sure that we're offering the best service we can to our clients.
I think I have a question that's probably way too specific, but we do business all over the country, and in certain states we have to incorporate to do that, but in other places we don't. So is that something we use some sort of service for that? Is that something that you can help with, or are your attorneys licensed? I know somebody mentioned California, but are beyond Missouri, Illinois?
Yeah, we can help anywhere, in any state. We have to be licensed to litigate and to appear in court. But as far as registering to do business, and every state has its own requirements with regard to what's considered doing business in that state. Some are a little more stringent than others. But yes, absolutely. We have a lot of clients that practice all over the US that we help them get registered there. There are different companies out there that help serve as registered agents, and those are wonderful companies. We use some of those companies in other states. So yeah, that's definitely a good option too, to have a registered agent company. I always just think it's best to have that tied to whoever your business attorney is, so that in the unfortunate situation that you are sued, it's automatically in the hands of your business attorney so that they can promptly respond.
And it might be
Yes.
worth doing an audit on all those other companies, especially if you went through a service that registered you as an entity in all these, because you're going to have Corporate Transparency Act filings on all these entities. So it's worth doing an audit to see how that registration should be. Because like to Kate's point, like it's different in every state and how stringent that rule is. Sometimes you just have to register doing business as in that state. As a foreign, you don't have to actually put a whole new entity into that state. But it's worth reviewing that too, making sure you have someone who's really guiding you through that. So you don't have to file all these CTA filings. So
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm realizing it's probably kind of a mess, because I said the word incorporated, but that's, we're an LLC.
Registered as a foreign entity, probably. If you're incorporated in Missouri but do business in a bunch of different places, you would just register as a foreign entity in those other states.
It sounds like I need to talk to you. Thank you.
Any other question?
Well, I guess not. Thank you so much for sharing your time and talents. I'm really excited that this was recorded, because there's so many that have reached out saying, I wish I could attend, but I couldn't be there today. So this was incredible. Thank you for supporting the GR.I.T community. And thank you all who chose to attend. I highly encourage for you to have a conversation with them if any of these points were of interest, or they made you a little concerned about your business to make sure you're doing the right thing. So thank you again, guys. I really appreciate it. The next thing on the list for the GRIT community is next week, Wednesday. We have actually Rachel Wilkins, who's going to be talking about how it's really important to develop your she calls it your making sure your correlation of stars are in line for 2024, meaning your key rock star networking supporters. So if that's of interest to you, the tickets are live on Eventbrite, and it's going to be at Woodard from 11:30 to 1:30 next week, Wednesday. So thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.